Hello and welcome to this latest episode of my YouTube channel, Kaya Kaynak 97. I'm here with you for the final time from my hotel in New Jersey. I'm about to fly out to LA later for the LA leg of this Arsenal pre-season tour where they'll be taking on Barcelona. I'm coming to you after not the greatest of results for Arsenal last night, not the greatest of performance against Manchester United, a 2-0 defeat at the MetLife Stadium here in New Jersey, a disappointing afternoon all round for the Gunners. They then made it even worse by losing on penalties. Fabio Vieira really respecting the NFL roots of the MetLife Stadium by blasting the ball sky high. I think it's only just come down that penalty, not a good penalty from him. But the rest of them all went in. Unfortunately for Arsenal, 2 losses in the space of one night. It was a tough evening, but some positives that can still be taken and some interesting talking points, which I'm going to get through on this video today. It's going to be a quick one because I do have to leave to catch my flight relatively soon. So not the longest video, but I'll try and get you a bit more in depth tomorrow, hopefully when I've got a bit more time. But yeah, obviously, as always, I want to start off by saying thank you to you guys for helping me on these videos, all your support and all your comments. They're so nice. I really appreciate them. Please do keep them coming in. It's so nice to see. And if you're not following me on my other platforms, please do at Kaya Kaynak 97 on Twitter, Kaya Kaynak Journalist on Facebook, and then Kaya Kaynak FL on Instagram and Threads as well. We're up to 3.44 thousand subscribers on YouTube. I'd love to get to 3.5 by the end of the day. So if you guys can help me out with that, that would be amazing. Please do keep liking and subscribing. It really helps with the videos and the channel. So yeah, let's get into the game. And hang on, I need to load up these slides first, which I haven't had a chance to do. So while I'm doing that, let's talk about quickly the main talking points of the game. And obviously, it actually started pretty well for Arsenal on the day, I thought. It was quite a high tempo game, quite evenly matched between the two sides. I thought Manchester United came out looking pretty decent. I thought Arsenal started looking pretty decent. And it was Arsenal who actually had the bigger chances earlier on, I think. Obviously, Anthony had a chance for Manchester United, but the big chance fell to Gabriel Martinelli. Great work from Jurriën Timber, who I thought was fantastic across the day. I gave him my man of the match in the first half. The way I do my player ratings in pre-season, we do a sort of a first half player ratings and a second half player ratings on Football London. And I'll put those in the link description so you guys can have a read of them if you fancy. But yeah, Timber did well to find Bukayo Saka. Bukayo Saka picks out Gabriel Martinelli at the back post. Martinelli should score, hits it straight at Tom Heaton, gets a second bite of the cherry and doesn't score again. And kind of set the tone from that point onwards. It felt like a sliding doors moment in the game. And Mikel Arteta even referenced it after the game when I asked him. He said, if Martinelli puts that away, it might be a very different story. Like I say, United had their chances, but that was Arsenal's best chance of the game. And they had been, I think, on top pretty much until that point. But football is decided, as Arteta always says, in the boxes and big moments. And it wasn't too long after that Arsenal did find themselves behind. And a disappointing moment for Aaron Ramsdale on the right there. A goal for Bruno Fernandes, which I think from an Arsenal fan's perspective is always a little frustrating to see because he's maybe not the most likable of opposition players. But it was one where I think a lot of the flaws with the Arsenal sort of tactical setup or a lot of the rough edges that need to be smoothed out were exposed, and we'll come on to those a little bit later in the video in terms of the midfield. But Manchester United were able to just ping a long ball over the top. It was Heaton out to Kobe Mainoo. Mainoo pulls Rice out wide, leaving a massive gaping hole in the midfield. Mainoo finds Bruno Fernandes. Fernandes runs forward. Tomiyasu can't get out to him. Havertz is a little too slow to track him back, and suddenly, before you know it, he's getting a free shot off. Now, I think Aaron Ramsdale should probably save the shot, and he'll feel that he should have saved the shot, and he'll be disappointed. Obviously, the pitch at the MetLife, you can't really see in those pictures, but it was atrocious. It's definitely an NFL pitch, and it looked like it had been laid just before. It did not look good, but maybe the bouncers there deceived him, but it bounced up just in front of him. Still, though, he will have wanted to save a shot like that, and that grimace on his face. It was interesting, just as the goal went in was when the first drinks break happened, and Arteta immediately called his players over and they went over to get a bottle of water and a drink and to cool down. But Ramsdale sort of took a moment to sort of, I guess, recompose himself after the error, just sort of stood next to his goal while the rest of the team were over getting their instructions from Arteta. He was sort of just staring out, contemplating the mistake he just made. It was a frustrating one for him, I think, because he's had, I thought he looked pretty good against the All-Stars, looked pretty good in Nuremberg against Germany. Obviously looked fantastic towards the end of the season, last season for Arsenal as well. But unfortunately, he seems to have started with a rick there. And I guess some people have question marks over Aaron Ramsdale. Personally, I don't, but some people do. And that won't have done too much for those people who have their doubts. Arsenal did start to get back into it again, but another error caused an issue for them as they tried to play their way back into the game. This was just a a long hopeful punt from Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I don't think he even intended necessarily for it to find Jadon Sancho. I think he just wanted to hoof it away and get it out of danger. But again, we saw the problems, I guess, with this high line, and it's a bit of a balance. So Arsenal will play this high line, and when they win the ball up high and they score goals from that, we'll all be saying, wow, this is fantastic. This aggressive approach from Arsenal is superb. We need to see more of that. But then the flip side of that, and obviously the risk that sort of goes against the reward of potentially more goals, is that you leave yourself more open at the back. And Arsenal playing a very high line, and it means that the defence, that back four and Rice just in front of them, they can't really afford to make too many mistakes. And Gabriel totally miskicked the ball, allowing Jadon Sancho in. And to be fair, Sancho still had quite a lot to do. He had to run all the way to the goal, and it was a really good near post finish. But punished in the most brutal fashion there, Gabriel. You can see him in the background there, that picture. Or for those who are on podcasts, he looks pretty devastated with the mistake, and he immediately sort of grabbed the ball, booted it back to halfway. Ramsdale sort of tried to console him, but he wasn't really having any of it. I think he was very disappointed with himself, and he recovered to have a pretty good second half, Gabriel. I thought he's been pretty good across the pre-season. It's a shame for him because those kind of errors are what he'd managed to sort of, I guess, iron out of his game over the past year or so. It started the season, there was that error against Spurs and the one against Fulham that got punished by Mitrovic. And you started to think, oh, is this a bit of a problem? Does Gabriel have a bit of a rick in him? Lots of people are asking that. I personally don't think he's too much of an issue. I think he's one of the best central defenders in the Premier League, but he does sometimes make those little mistakes. Listen, it was an error that I'm sure 99 times out of 100 he clears that ball comfortably. And like I say, Jadon Sancho punished it in the most brutal way imaginable, but it was unfortunate for Arsenal. And without having played too badly, and this might seem weird for a team that was 2-0 down, the back four hadn't really done much wrong. They'd followed Mikel Arteta's tactics to the letter. They were inverting well. Tomiyasu and Timber, the fullbacks, they were inverting pretty well. Good to see Tomiyasu back out starting after an injury, so that was good. They were doing their job. Rice looked relatively solid in front of the back four. I did think Rice played within himself a bit, but like I say, we'll get onto the midfield in a bit more depth in a minute. But they were beaten by two really unfortunate errors. On another day, that game ends 0-0, maybe even 1-0 to Arsenal if Martinelli puts his finish away. And it was just a game where fine margins decide things. And I think Arteta was keen to hold on to that in the post-match. He was keen to say, look, we've lost the game. It's up to us to sort of see how we react. We're up against some of the best teams in the world, and being a title challenger now rather than just a surprise package, Arsenal have got themselves into a position where teams will want to come and beat them, and that's just the reality of the situation for them right now. So they're going to have to deal with this. And then obviously the penalty shootout came along. I don't think Aaron Ramsdale got close to any of them, so that was pretty disappointing from his perspective. But Man United put all 5 of their penalties away. Fabio Vieira, like I said earlier, a sky-high penalty kick. He sort of immediately looked down at the turf as footballers tend to do when they sky penalties. But I don't know. I don't think it was one of his better moments. I was surprised that Jorginho was so late in the penalty shootout. But hey ho, that's the way it goes sometimes, and didn't really work out for Arsenal on the day. The result was poor. I don't think the performance was terrible, but there were aspects of it that were a little bit confusing. One thing I do want to raise actually is the slightly physical approach that Manchester United went for, and that awful tackle by Lisandro Martinez. The immediate reaction when seeing it was almost to laugh in shock at how appalling a tackle it was for a pre-season friendly. And if you've not seen it, I'm sure you'll be able to see it on Twitter. It's doing the rounds. A really, really bad tackle. I know Martinez's whole brand is aggressive style and sort of getting into people, but he really went in on Saka in, let's repeat, a pre-season friendly. I know Ten Hag said before the game we don't play pre-season friendlies, but there is a sort of an unwritten rule that you have to sort of take it a little bit easy, not sort of flying into tackles that could injure people. Pardon me. I remember Wesley Fofana got a really bad injury a few years ago, and that caused a lot of outrage because the tackle was so bad. And this could have been a bad one. Martinez went in with a terrible tackle on Saka, and Martin Odegaard there, you can see, one of the calmest sort of, I guess, nicest guys in the Arsenal team, and even he went over and started shoving Martinez, sort of saying, mate, what are you doing? Like, just trying to calm him, like trying to get him to calm down, because Martinez was at it the whole half. He went for a few naughty challenges on Eddie Nketiah as well. Came off around half time. He was only booked by the referee, and again, sort of friendly laws, I guess, dictate that you're not probably going to get a red card for a tackle like that in a pre-season game. But I wonder if VAR had been in place, or if there had been like a proper competitive edge to the game if Martinez might have seen red for that tackle, because it was appalling. There was no need to do it on the ball. Saka was away from him, and Martinez wasn't even really marking him. He sort of made a point of going out and tried to just boot him, and could really have caused a lot of problems. He really whacked Saka into another player. I can't remember who it was. It may have been Fernandes, just judging by who's sort of standing around. But yeah, nasty tackle by Lisandro Martinez. I asked Arteta about it after in the press conference. He wouldn't really be drawn on it. He just sort of said, look, both teams are trying to win. That's the way they want to win. It's up to the referee to deal with it. And to be fair, I think yellow was probably just about the right way for the ref to deal with it. If he'd given a red card, it probably would have defeated the game as a pre-season exercise. But terrible tackle by Martinez. And there's been a few sort of bad tackles on Saka and Nketiah in particular. And the MLS All-Stars, we saw a couple of bad tackles on that pair. And I don't know. I think Mikel Arteta might just be a little bit wary of that. He's always one to avoid sort of creating a victim complex within his team, but it's just one to keep an eye on, I think. Another thing to keep an eye on as the game goes forward, we got a chance to see the first outing of this new look Arsenal midfield. Obviously, Declan Rice in the middle there, Havertz on the left, and Odegaard on the right. A few issues, and Mikel Arteta was asked about it after the game. He said, look, it's going to take, after 55 games of playing together, they'll be much better. And he was essentially saying it's going to take time for these guys to gel. And I think you can see that there are a few edges that need to be roughed out. There's a few sort of teething pains, if you like, a few growing pains that need to be sorted for this midfield. I thought Rice at the base of the midfield in possession was a little bit playing within himself. He wasn't maybe as much of a release valve as Thomas Partey can be. Sometimes when Arsenal are under so much pressure, Partey can just ghost away from a player and knock a pass forward. And if Rice is going to be the guy to replace him, then I think he does need to be a little bit more adventurous on the ball than he was the other day. He looked a little bit, I don't want to say shy, but I think he would have felt that he could have been a bit more expressive in possession than he was. I think he wasn't quite as up to his standards, because we've seen him do it for West Ham. When he's confident, when he's on the ball, he can knock it forward pretty well, but he didn't quite do that. Havertz, a quiet game for him. He had one chance in the second half where he sort of headed onto the roof of the net, but with Odegaard alongside him, you come up with this issue in the Arsenal midfield. And the issue now is with Xhaka in there instead of Havertz and Partey sitting a little bit deeper and Odegaard being forward, the trio had sort of a perfect blend where Partey was generally situated deeper, Odegaard was generally focused on getting forward more, and Xhaka was sort of the go-between in between the two. He could sort of be like like sliding you know how like DJs have like sort of volume knobs on their turntables. You can slide it up and down, and depending on whether Arsenal needed to attack more, you slide it up. Depending on whether they need to defend more, you slide it down. And Xhaka was great for that. Havertz is obviously more offensively minded as a player naturally. I mean, he spent most of his past 3 seasons at Chelsea playing as a number 9, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to the more defensive responsibilities he's got to do, if that is what indeed Mikel Arteta wants, unless he wants Odegaard maybe to be defending a little bit more. But then you start to wonder, this guy scored 15 goals in the Premier League last season, no penalties. Surely you want him in the final third getting involved as well. So a tricky balance for Arsenal to find. And obviously it does seem that Thomas Partey is going to stay, and maybe there'll be some games where Declan Rice moves forward into a more box-to-box role and Partey comes in at the base of the midfield, and then Havertz sort of plays elsewhere. But Odegaard obviously isn't going to be dropped anytime soon because he's the club captain and arguably best player. So it is an issue that Arteta does need to work on. I think that's something that just needs to be focused on a little bit in training over the next few months, and maybe in game it's something that Arsenal will start to develop a little bit more. I have seen a lot of people suggesting that maybe Arsenal don't have time to wait for this to gel, and I think that is a fair point. I mean, Mikel Arteta has essentially taken a midfield in Partey, Xhaka and Odegaard that nearly won the Premier League last season and gone to replace 2/3 of it. That's highly unusual, and he's done it in a very expensive manner as well. I mean, Havertz and Rice combined could rise up to £170 million in transfer fees. It's not cheap, so kind of has to work. Having said that, I do think that Arteta deserves a bit of time. You know, he's got most things right in his Arsenal managerial career so far, and I trust him on this one. I think, you know, if he sees something, there have been signings in the past where maybe we haven't seen it. We haven't seen how he's planning to use that player in that position. For example, none of us saw Granit Xhaka playing the left 8 role, but it worked eventually, and he's got sort of a license, I think, to try these new things out. But I do think with that midfield, if it continues to look a little bit rusty, let's say, not rusty, rusty's the wrong word because it implies they've sort of been together for a long time, but a little bit sort of raw, I'll go for that instead, maybe some Arsenal fans might start to show a little bit of concern towards some of his tactical decisions, which they've not done really for about 2 years, basically since he started getting things right after COVID. They've been pretty much behind Arteta the whole way. I just wonder if maybe that's something to keep an eye on as the season goes, or maybe Arteta will look to establish a little bit more balance in the midfield by playing maybe a different setup. I don't know, but it's just something to watch over the coming games. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that midfield blends. The midfield did, I think, look a lot better when Emile Smith Rowe came onto the pitch. I thought he had a really solid cameo. There's him getting booted up into the air by Casemiro, continuation of that offensive, aggressive strategy from Manchester United. But I thought Emile looked really, really good. And maybe it's been under the radar, given all the focus on Partey coming back into the team a little bit later. But Emile's been good. He's come back, joined up in Washington, been training, ready to play in Manchester United in New Jersey, as I reported earlier in the week. And I thought it was a really solid first return for Smith Rowe. He's obviously not been... sorry. Hi. Okay. Same as yesterday. Cleaners coming in. I've only got 7 minutes so I need to check out, so I'll start to wrap this up a little bit quicker. But I'll start to focus on those quotes from Emile Smith Rowe. Playing in the central midfield position, which I thought was interesting, looking pretty good in that left 8 role. Slightly different from where he's played in the past, which has generally been on the left wing. Emile sort of referenced the competition he's got in for a starting position. Obviously, spoke to us in the mixed zone, and obviously Havertz has come in, Trossard has come in. Those are his primary 2 positions. Martinelli's ahead of him in the left wing as well, and Odegaard obviously on the right 8 position. Right wing is obviously Kaya Kaynak, and up front, where Arteta suggested he might be able to play is Jesus and Nketiah and even Flo Balogun. And Smith Rowe reacted really well to that. He said, I'm at a big club, and if I didn't have any competition, there would be no point. I have to push myself every day in training. It's tough. I need to keep working hard. A big season, massive for me. Last season was tough. I have to stay focused, keep training, and try to get myself in the team. I feel good and strong. The Euros is a big achievement, and now I'm feeling confident in myself. And I thought those were just a really strong message for him to be sending out to the media. He's sort of saying, I guess, sort of a little bit to Arteta, like, I'm ready. I'm ready to fight for this place in the team. I'm ready to, maybe people think you're moving on without me, but I'm not ready to be left behind. And I thought it was a really strong piece of quotes there from Emile. I thought he spoke really, really well, and he looked good on the pitch. He's been away with England. He's done really well with the under-21 Euros, scored 2 goals and got an assist en route to helping them win the competition in Georgia. And just a nice sort of reminder of what he can do, because I do think maybe at times last season he was a little bit harshly overlooked, and I think he deserves a little chance this season. And maybe he'll start against Barcelona in LA. I'm hopeful that will be the case, because I'd love to see him get a go from the off. Right, I'm going to start to wrap things up, because like I say, I've got to be out of here pretty quickly, pretty sharpish. But thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, as ever, for all your support. It really means the world. I'm so grateful for everything that you guys are doing. Please keep following me on Twitter at Kaya Kaynak 97, on Facebook, Kaya Kaynak Journalist, on Instagram, Kaya Kaynak FL, and Threads is exactly the same. I'll be back with you very shortly, hopefully with another video when we're in LA. So do keep an eye on all those platforms, and keep an eye on the football.london pages as well, as we bring you live coverage of Arsenal Barcelona and all the build up to that as well. Until then, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Please do keep liking and subscribing, and I'll see you all very soon. Cheers, guys, and goodbye.